The stage is officially set for the Western Conference Finals. The Timberwolves are back for the second straight year, while the 68-win Thunder make their first appearance since 2016. But what exactly can we expect from this matchup? Pand, who has the edge? The Wolves are, by far, the best defensive team OKC has faced during this postseason run. While on the flip side, the Thunder are easily the most versatile offensive unit Minnesota has encountered. Of course, the top priority for any team going up against OKC is finding any way to slow down Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And it's possible Denver may have laid out the blueprint. Shai still averaged 30 points and 7 assists on 63% true shooting in that series. But as a team, the Thunder struggled to consistently create advantages, and their offensive efficiency dipped below regular season levels. The Nuggets often played a soft zone, aggressively cutting off passing lanes while parking Jokic in the middle to keep Shai from touching the paint. And there's nothing stopping the Wolves from using the same strategy, only this time with Jaden McDaniels on ball and Rudy Gobert patrolling the interior, which presents a much tougher challenge. As a result, OKC might shift to a more pick-and-roll heavy approach to draw Rudy away from the rim. That adjustment puts the Wolves in interesting positions based on matchups. If Gobert is guarding Chet Holmgren, we'll likely see more pick-and-pop plays, prompting Minnesota to replicate what they did against the Lakers, using a high drop with Rudy while Jaden fights through screens, switching late if necessary to avoid giving up clean catch, shoot threes. If Gobert is guarding Hartenstein, who thrives in the middle with floaters or extra passes, we'll probably see Rudy in a more traditional drop, daring Shai to win as an in-between scorer. The problem? Shai happens to be the best in-between scorer in the league. If he starts to cook, Minnesota will be forced into difficult decisions. Bring Rudy up to hedge or trap, or switch actions to keep Gobert anchored at the rim, then switch on ball to funnel Shai into help. It could even mean putting Rudy on a spot-up shooter like Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, or Aaron Wigginzel, allowing him to roam and play free safety, especially when OKC only has one big on the floor. And that's why the number one key for the Thunder is simple. Their spot-up shooters must hit shots. If they don't, Rudy can camp in the paint without fear of being punished by a closeout, which is devastating for any offense. Should their shooters go cold, OKC has two possible counters. First, sub in players who are making shots, swap out Dort for Joe or Wallace for Wiggins. But if none of them are hitting, then if OKC needs to keep one of their non-shooting role players on the floor, they'll likely have to use those players as screeners, just like they did against the Nuggets to pull Gobert away from the paint. That would force Minnesota to choose between letting Gobert step up to those screens or continuing to pre-switch, so he doesn't have to leave the interior. But if OKC can't drag Gobert into the action, they'll need to pivot their approach. In the starting lineups, they'll likely try to involve Conley in as many actions as possible. However, the Wolves are well equipped to defend this. Looking back at the Celtics-Knicks series, both Tatum and Brown repeatedly hunted Brunson, and the Knicks responded by having Brunson hedge out while the primary defender went under the screen, leaving a brief window for pull-up threes. The Wolves could easily mimic that with Shai and JDUB, especially since Conley is excellent at hedging and Minnesota's wings are elite screen navigators. Plus, both Shai and JDUB have struggled from three during this postseason. To force a switch, OKC could reverse the action and have Shai set the screen similar to what Boston did to isolate Brunson, but even then, the Wolves usually close games with Nickel Alexander-Walker over Conley, and if they must switch Conley onto the ball, it's not a major concern thanks to the stacked help defense behind him and Gobert anchoring the paint. When it comes to switching, Minnesota will likely be comfortable switching anyone else Kyle Anderson or even Nezri Shai, knowing that isolations become less threatening when help is always there, and an elite rim protector is lurking. Much like in the Nuggets series, OKC's isolation success will depend on their ability to break down aggressive help. Second-side attacks are crucial. They can make or break OKC's offensive ceiling. Shai may not be the most advanced passer, but he's done a solid job this postseason, finding soft spots and triggering defensive rotations. From there, it's up to the supporting cast to exploit those rotations and extend advantages off the catch. J-Dub will need to play a big role, especially after struggling offensively against Denver. If their shooters go cold, expect OKC to lean more on Wiggins or Joe to alleviate pressure on Shai. To quickly recap, there are a few major offensive keys for the Thunder in this series. First, their role players must hit open threes. Second, supporting players must consistently beat rotations with second-side attacks. Schematically, they need to involve Gobert in as many actions as possible and ideally get Conley or Anderson switched onto the ball before initiating isolations too. Force more help. Finally, they must ride the hot hand between Dort, Caruso, and Wallison. If none are hitting, pivot to Joe or Wiggins for extra offensive punch. All that said, OKC can still struggle offensively and win the series thanks to their elite team defense, which gives them one of the highest floors in NBA history. Quick note, I'll be live streaming this series as well as Knicks Pacers in the NBA Finals on playback. We want to catch my live reactions, play-by-play commentary, or just hang out with other fans during the game. Check out the link in the description. Now, back to OKC's defense. What really separates them is their personnel, which is unlike anything Minnesota has faced in the playoffs so far due to how the bracket shaped up. The Wolves haven't encountered a single vertical rim protector in either of the first two rounds. OKC not only has one, they have two, including the NBA's second-best shot blocker. The Lakers and Warriors had weak guards or wings that Anthony Edwards could target. That won't be the case against the Thunder, who don't struggle in that area. Minnesota's primary offensive approach during this run has been allowing Ant to hunt for a favorable switch, then spacing the floor so he can go one-on-one. Against the Lakers, that meant getting either Austin Reeves or D'Angelo Russell on the ball, beating them easily off the dribble, and finishing at the rim or kicking out two spot-up shooters. Against the Warriors, it was any one of Healed Pajimski or Kuminga. Ant would exploit them the same way. Against OKC, though, there isn't an obvious mismatch among Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, Jalen Williams, JDUB, and Kassan Wallace for defenders who can switch seamlessly onto Ant and offer at least some resistance. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander might be the target Ant looks for, as he isn't quite quick or strong enough to stop downhill pressure, which puts OKC in a tricky situation. Do they switch Shai onto Ant or Hedge? They can't afford to go under screens because Ant is lethal on pull-up threes. And if they put two on the ball, Minnesota's wings are ready to pop out, take open shots, or drive off the catch. So, most likely Shai will switch more often than Hedge, and the Thunder will rely on their shell defense to load up behind the play, just like they did against Denver. OKC's superpower is the defensive execution of their wings' elite in positioning, speed, and ball-hawking ability. And Minnesota's weakness is a lack of great passers across the roster. Against a scrambling, aggressive defense, the Wolves could face problems generating clean shots or might turn the ball over more frequently. That would allow OKC to wall off the paint from Ant, limiting his slashing and forcing Minnesota's role players into difficult decisions, because attacking OKC's wings one-on-one may not yield results. I expect the Wolves to shift their focus toward targeting OKC's bigs. Neither Chet Holmgren nor Isaiah Hartenstein is going to switch on the perimeter, which opens opportunities via pick and roll. If Ant sees drop coverage, screen navigation has to be elite. Otherwise, he'll get easy pull-up threes. I expect OKC to start and finish games with Chet guarding Jaden McDaniels. Minnesota has used McDaniels as a screener often due to his capability in the short roll. If Gobert is the screener, I anticipate OKC trapping, forcing Rudy to operate in the short roll, a scenario he often struggles with. OKC's secondary rim protection and swarming wings would then be able to collapse and take away passing lanes. Because of that, this could end up being more of a Nas Reed series. Reed's ability to pop and either shoot the three or handle the ball makes it difficult for OKC to drop or trap effectively, allowing Minnesota to generate real advantages. If Gobert is on the floor and they're struggling to punish OKC's coverages, another option could be to run more half-court offense through Kyle Anderson, referred to earlier as Randall. Ability to generate downhill pressure, finish efficiently, and find shooters has been a huge part of Minnesota's success in these playoffs not just by exploiting mismatches but also by creating on his own. He's posed problems for every defense he's faced, given OKC's wing depth. He could be in for another big series. I think the Wolves can get away with switching everything defensively. But the real issue arises once Julius Randle gets into his attack. Late help isn't much of an option because that's when he consistently finds corner shooters for wide-open threes. They could try leaving him in single coverage and trust their defenders to slow him down one-on-one. But even Draymond Green struggled to contain him. If Randle starts scoring too efficiently, they might need to load up aggressively, similar to the strategy expect them to use against Ant, but that risks Ant catching the ball with an advantage, which is essentially a death sentence. It's difficult to pinpoint a reliable solution for the Julius Randle problem, and a legitimate path to a Wolves victory could be pushing that matchup as much as possible. It's also worth mentioning that Minnesota's size and athleticism, not just with Ant and Randle, but throughout the lineup, gives them a slight personnel advantage over OKC's rotation. While I previously mentioned OKC might want to get Isaiah Joe on the floor for extra offense, I'm not sure he can stay out there defensively against the Wolves. And the same applies to Jalen Williams, who Ant would likely target in every action, to create easy mismatches. One of the biggest things I'll be watching is whether Minnesota can speed up their offense. OKC's half-court defense is nearly impossible to crack possession by possession, so the Wolves may need to attack earlier in the clock. The question is whether they're capable of playing with that kind of pace during the regular season. They ranked just 27th in transition frequency, roughly 13% of their possessions. However, in the playoffs, they've ramped it up to over 14%, which ranks 7th. And they've been incredibly efficient, scoring 1.4 points per possession in transition, second only to the Thunder. So, in terms of total points of emphasis, several align with OKC's keys. Role players need to hit open threes, though I'm less concerned here since Minnesota has a more reliable shooting cast, and supporting players must make sharp decisions and timely drives to break OKC's shell defense by collapsing the paint. They'll need to force OKC's bigs into the action, whether by using Jaden McDaniels as a screener or by playing more through Naz Reid, whose shooting and ball handling make defensive coverages harder to execute. Utilizing Randle in the half-court is also crucial as he forces the Thunder to make their toughest defensive decisions. Finally, the Wolves must play with more pace. If they execute on all fronts, they might just have enough to break through OKC's elite defense. That said, where does this leave us in predicting the series outcome? One final factor is the 48-hour turnaround after Game 7, giving Minnesota a slight rest advantage. Offensively and defensively, both teams have exploitable areas, which suggests this will be a tightly contested and competitive series. I'm expecting it to go 6 or 7 games. If I had to make a pick, I'd lean toward the Thunder escaping in 6 games. I trust their defensive execution more. I believe Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will clearly establish himself as the best player in the series. For those reasons, I think OKC will reach the NBA Finals for the first time in 13 years. This breakdown, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications for more content. For deeper analysis, check out the Hoop Venue podcast and my social media profiles linked in the description. Let me know in the comments who you think will win the series. As always, I hope you have a great day and I'll catch you in the next one.